You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Legacy Wealth Management, Posture Screen, Chiro Thin, Imaging Services, Zingit Solutions, Peter Goldman's Zone School of Healing, Everest Coaching Systems, Universal Tractioning Systems, Rhino Coaching, Chiropractic Jobs Online, and Chiro Matchmakers. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 89 of Chiro Hustle. I'm your co-host, Luke Millette. Here's your host, Jim Chester.
So today we had the honor of interviewing Dr. Evan Katz out of Boulder, Colorado. And if you're ready to have your mind blown with research, stay tuned. So Dr. Evan, tell us about your chiropractic story and what influenced you to become a chiropractor.
Okay. Well, first I just want to say thanks for having me on here.
Oh, yeah.
And I totally appreciate everything you're doing, and getting so many docs to listen to your podcast, me being one, it's just great information. So I appreciate the work that you've done behind all this. How I got into chiropractor, I think, into chiropractic is probably very similar to a lot of chiropractors. You're exercising, working out, doing the sports that you like, and you get hurt, and a lot of people are telling you you're not going to get better, to take this drug. And then you go to a chiropractor and you start to feel better. And luckily for me, my mom's brother, Dr. Jerry Whitner, he's been a chiropractor for over 50 years now, and he's in Newburgh, New York. And I was just growing up getting adjusted by him. And he would explain to me, but I never really asked a lot of questions as a young kid. And then as I got older, I always was interested in science and anatomy and physiology and how the body works. And I would always feel better after getting adjusted. So as I started going through school, I started looking at other healthcare professions and started talking to my uncle and my cousin, who's older than me, is also a chiropractor. His name's Dr. David Ness. He's in New York too. And they were both chiropractors, my uncle and my cousin. And then I decided I want to be a chiropractor as well after wanting to learn more about the body and how it's helped, how it's always helped me.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I think that a lot of times guys like myself, I started getting adjusted when I was 16 from, being an athlete. And I really didn't know anything about what was going on with chiropractic other than, like you, I just felt better. But it is really cool to see, having an influence from a young age can have an impact on somebody choosing chiropractic for a career as well.
Oh, yeah. I think when you go and you leave and you feel better, I'm like my wife as well. She's a chiropractor. Again, she got hurt. Everyone was telling her you're never going to be the same. You're always going to be in pain from MDs and other providers. And then she saw a chiropractor and she got her life back. So it's the same thing. She's like, I want to figure out what this is and help others. And that's how we got into it.
Yeah, and so I know that your story is pretty interesting. You've been out practice now for almost 20 years. And you are very involved with Chiropractic Biophysics. Let's just talk a little bit about what kind of makes you unique in the chiropractic space.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I like to do and why CBP has kind of drawn me into that technique was when I was in school. We always hear about a subluxation. And some people saying, "Oh, this is your pattern, or this is your subluxation." And I remember in school, asking like, "Well, does it ever change? Like, why is that subluxation always the same on me?" And one of my buddies, Dr. Philip Aragon, he's in Arizona, was like, "Come to the CBP club," because I would always go to the different clubs. And I remember a doc was talking about, they were translating this loss of curve, and I was like, "Oh man, this seems like the missing link. Like, you can change this." So I got into it with that because, it's like, we're identifying a subluxation or a subluxation pattern or, cervical kyphosis, which is a subluxated neck that, leads to bad outcomes. And then they were like, well, we can fix this with chiropractic. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to learn how to actually fix this. I don't want to be the guy that has a flex C5 for the rest of my life. It was like I had a flex C5 with a kyphosis, and then I did chiropractic, and in this case it's CBP, to restore that. So I got into just doing it and learning about it. And I was lucky enough at Life West where it was an elective, so I took it throughout school, and then just continued to learn and read the studies that Dee Harrison and those docs published, and it made a lot of sense to me to say, yeah, there are subluxations that you can correlate objectively to the patient's subjective findings and their health, but then here's something where we could actually remove it and show it objectively as well.
Yeah, that part really fascinates me, and it's almost like, the chiropractic biophysics really leans heavily into scientific research, and I know you've been doing some really cool stuff with research. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have done, I got published in Journal of Pain Physician and wrote some things for Journal of the Spine Journal and some other journals, but recently, as I was talking to you earlier, Jim, my wife and I, for the last 2 years, we've seen some studies that show some vascular changes with the shape of the neck. And my wife and I decided to fund it ourselves, and we were able to fund it a little bit with some of the people that have joined one of our sites that we use that money to help fund it, and we paid for a bunch of angiograms, MR angiograms, and we did pre and post angiograms. And I can't get into it all. In the next 2 weeks I will, just simply because it was accepted for publication, but it's not released yet. And we hired a PhD, and we got some other great docs to help us. Douglas Lightstone, Curtis Fedorchik, which I probably brutalized his name, and we analyzed, without getting into the details, we analyzed vascular change, and we submitted into it. We believe it's the top third or the third leading vascular brain journal, and it just got accepted a week ago today. And we now have evidence that when this comes out to talk about more, that what we do and what we can do can dramatically affect the brain and vasculature and other structures, without getting into it too much, and this is on multiple patients. This is, to me, I think it's pretty groundbreaking, and I can't believe, I know our philosophy tells us this, and I know, here's my hypothesis, but to be able to do what we just did and to get it in this journal, I don't even know what to say.
So do you have any favorite quotes or mantras that keep you fired up as a chiropractor?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite quotes that I always say, my wife and I say, is let's just raise the bar. And what that means is continue to give exceptional care, right? Don't get wrapped up in patient numbers and how many people are there, but just continue to educate the community on what it is that we have to do. Just raise the bar of the healthcare community. Not necessarily raise the bar of chiropractic, but raise the bar of yourself. And by raising our bar, what my wife and I always say is, let's just raise the bar. Let's just give what we think is better care. Let's just give what we think is better education to our patients. Let's give what we think is raising the bar on our attention to our patients' overall life and quality of care. And in order for us to raise the bar, we have to continue to keep ourselves educated. We have to continue to ask questions. We have to continue to rock the boat a little bit and ruffle feathers where, a lot of the docs that I know, we're constantly bantering each other in a way like, well, you said that, well, how do you know? And it's just raise that level. So if you have that philosophical belief, what can we do to really show the community what it is that we do and give that quality of care back in our office? So that's kind of been my wife and ours mantra, just raise the bar, raise the level.
So what's next for you? Do you have anything else coming up, and what's possible in the future with everything you're doing and accomplishing now?
Yeah, I love practicing. I don't want to stop. I was asked to be one of the lead docs for the ICA program starting here February 2nd and 3rd on advancements of management of traumatic spinal injuries, and it's a full module course. I'm really excited to put this on because I like educating. I like hearing what other people have to say, and I like giving docs the research to validate our treatment. That I want to continue to do more of. We want to continue to treat patients in a quality way. We do have another study that's coming out that, again, has never been done before, and I'm doing it with Michael Freeman because I got all this data that we've seen, and I showed it to him. He's like, "Wow, this is really fascinating." And I said, "Yeah." We started writing it up. I hired a PhD, and what I can say is this is going to be the first paper that, if and when it's published, it's multiple patients, pre and post, that actually show that conservative treatment, without really giving away, can really minimize certain significant upper cervical subluxations and injuries that we've never been able to truly prove. And now we're going to have hopefully a publication, and that should be submitted in the next couple of weeks. And I'm really confident that one's going to get published. And it's just to show more, like I'm not a researcher at all. In fact, I'm really bad at writing it up, which is where some of the other docs that were on this paper came in and were super strong or fantastic writers. I'm really good at trying to figure it out, thinking of ideas, looking at the data, and then saying, like, wow, other people should know this. Like, there's nothing else outside of surgery that can help these patients with this pathology. Even though all chiropractors across the world, we see it often in our office, like, wow, these people get better, but we don't have any evidence to show other people. So I just want to keep doing stuff like that. It's just like, look at what chiropractic can do. And that's what I think is next.
And that's so awesome. It's such a beautiful profession that it needs to have support, and it needs to have people that team together and use their power and their strength and their unity to create goodness. And I think that's really what we've done with the Chiro Hustle team is we've brought together, Luke's a filmmaker, I'm a journalist. Together we're content creators, and we figured out how we could leverage the chiropractic story into the world by making a documentary film. So it takes researchers, it takes media, it takes so much to get out there and to, build a stronger front for the communication aspect of what chiropractic is and really what it isn't. And I think, yeah,
absolutely. And look at what you've done, right? Like, you're really good at what you do, but in order to make Chiro Hustle as great as it is, there's other facets and other moving parts that there's someone out there that could do it better than you on that particular thing. So you brought them in, and then look at what you have. And I think that's what we've done too. And what we try to do is, hey, I know what my strength is, and I know what my weakness is. And sure, I want to be extremely optimistic and say I should put in the time to make my weaknesses my strengths. But at the same time, I also know there's people out there that do it way better than me, even if I tried really hard. And honestly, I don't have the time. I have my practice, my family. I want quality family time. And I would have to give some of that up to try to get better at something I'm not good at, where I can just bring someone like that in or hire somebody.
Yeah, I mean, every once in a while you have to vote with your dollars, and sometimes your dollars are trusting someone else as the expert as well. And I think that's a smart place to land.
100%. And I think I couldn't agree with that more. I think that's what we have to kind of look at is, and I just want to get, like, what is we do? And I know there's a lot of infighting in chiropractic, but we all know what we do works, right? It works, or else we wouldn't still be here. There'd be opioids, quote unquote, worked for a little while, and then look what happened. It exploded. We all knew it was going to explode. Chiropractic has been around. If it was going to explode, it would explode. So what we do works, but we just have to, how do we show that to the world? And right now, in the age of the age of the internet and the information age, is people are going to come in and look. Like, I want to know, like, okay, you said if you did this would happen, but I'm going to go home and Google it. So what I'm trying to do is, like, let's get out some really good research, or let's take the research that's already there and give it to docs to say, here, give this to your patients. show them how this spinal pathology or this spinal subluxation leads to worse outcomes. And our goal is to fix that. So they have this information so they don't have to go and Google it. And that's why I set up my site to have, like, here it is. It's all spoon-fed. Use it for further education and show the world, how not just what chiropractors are saying, but what the science is saying, and they're saying it without even knowing that they're talking about chiropractic in a lot of these like surgery journals, and that's the type of stuff that I like.
So the way things are going right now, and if they stay this way, where is chiropractic going to end up in 20 years?
I was looking at that question, and man, I think that's a multi-level question, right? Because I feel maybe it's just because of the internet, right? We're getting bombarded, and if we didn't have the internet, maybe we wouldn't be aware of what's happening in chiropractic, and maybe it seems more magnified because we focus on it. But I think we have like two sides of chiropractic, right? And they're not on this collision course with each other. You have one that's saying no one really needs chiropractic, a couple visits and you're okay. And then you have the other side down here that is saying everyone needs chiropractic and we're going to reduce subluxations. And they're on this course that is going further and further away. And the people on those same lines are chiropractors. And I think that they're all on a collision course, unless we can, and I'm not saying we all need to come together because that's not going to be possible. But I think, I'm more on this one where I think people need chiropractic, but to show if we continue to educate the community and educate the healthcare community on our philosophy, but also understanding the science that's out there, the research that's already been done, the research isn't being done, to validate that philosophy, to show, hey, this isn't just me saying, I believe when I do this, this gets better, is let's show that, let's explain that. So I think if we continue to just, follow either of those paths by saying, hey, when I adjust you, you're going to get better, that, someone else may come in, another profession might try to steal that. And if we're on the other side where we say people really only need a couple of visits to chiropractic, that's not going to end well. So in 20 years, like, I'd like to think where I'm going to be in 20 years is continuing to push our profession, continue to push me, to make what I think is making our profession better, using the science and research to validate our philosophy. And if we don't come together to really help to show what it is that we're doing, other professions are going to start stealing that subluxation basis. And I hate to say it, but, surgeons already are, right? They already are. They're already looking at abnormal curves, which is a subluxation, leads to bad problems. They are now fusing spines, cervical spines, with a lordosis because they know it's better. And why are we not, as chiropractors, if we're saying, hey, this is a subluxation, and we can objectively show it, and it matches their subjective findings, and we say their abnormal neck curve, it is a subluxation, and we can fix this. Why aren't we? Why are we not all coming together and be like, whoa, we can do this without cutting you open. We can do this without fusing you. We can do this without $100,000 in a one-day visit, and then hundreds of thousands of dollars of aftercare. If what I'm trying to say makes sense.
No, it does.
And that's, in 20 years, like, people are getting more and more informed because of the internet, and they're looking it up. And right now, we're not getting a lot of that information out there other than our philosophy is X. Let's validate our philosophy with the research. And that's what I've been trying to do.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Legacy Wealth Management, Posture Screen, Chiro Thin, Imaging Services, Zingit Solutions, Peter Goldman's Zone School of Healing, Everest Coaching Systems, Universal Tractioning Systems, Rhino Coaching, Chiropractic Jobs Online, and Chiro Matchmakers. Let's hustle.
And the thing is that you're saying is really like ringing true for me is I've been having this conversation recently about marketing in chiropractic, and that's where we're going to go to next with the next topic of conversation. But I've asked people, what's the most important thing to happen in chiropractic in the past 10 years, and a lot of people will say social media. And they'll say that the connection of how fast technology goes with sending information, and I think that that's really true to an extent. But I do think that what really matters is people still believing that research matters, and that validation within a system of chiropractic has to have the triune come together to make the profession stronger, which is the science, philosophy, and art. And if people really want to see the profession come together, they can't lop one of those triunes off. Like if they do lop one of those off, then it becomes non-chiropractic, and it becomes something that is other than chiropractic. And that's what always has to come back to the core of it, and that's what always has to come back to be remembered, that if we do go in this direction, then you guys are doing something that is not chiropractic.
Right. I think in the first part with the most important, and think about that, right? Some people think the most important thing that has come to chiropractic is technology. Like, really? Like, social media is the best thing that comes to chiropractic. Like, why don't we have these amazing information about chiropractic, right? Like, why is that not the most important thing, right? So when I look at, some of the stuff you see on social media, it's about learning how to sell that particular doc's office or care. But we don't see that with primary cares and neurosurgeons, right? Because people know what they do. Imagine if the public really knew what we did, because that information was out there. Not the marketing information, but like, man, I just read this study on chiropractic, and it, let's say the study that we just did, wow, it really made a brain change. Like, what is that going to do? That's going to light up social media on its own, but what was more important? The content of what social media was carrying, as opposed to social media trying to carry chiropractic. Like, I want social media to try to carry what we're trying to do. And yeah, there's the argument of, like, I've had some chiropractors say to me, like, hey, if I'm trying to fix the curve, I'm not a chiropractor anymore. Which is hurtful, and the same thing, I've talked to some docs about one of the studies that we did, and he said, well, I said, isn't this really great? Like, this is fascinating. Look at what we showed. And he says, well, it doesn't matter, because what was your intent? I'm like, well, I don't. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he's like, I said, well, let's just say you read this paper and it showed this fantastic outcome, and you didn't know my intent. Would that matter? And what we're doing is chiropractic. We are removing subluxations. There's nothing else that can do this. PT can't do it. Exercise can't do it. It's chiropractic. And that's what I want to get out there is, like, let me give you this information, Jim, to be like, yo, here's a groundbreaking study. Put that on Chiro Hustle. Let's see what happens, and that will blow it up. As opposed to, like, all right, let's try to teach docs how to, and it's great. You want to learn how to communicate and market and all that. I'm not saying that's not important, but imagine if the public saw, like, wow, here's a study with chiropractic and brain. How do we find a chiropractor near us?
What you're saying makes the hair on my arm stand up, because I know that that's why we're having these interviews with you. And that's why I know that we hold this space down to be able to share what's happening in the chiropractic space. And I think that that's really cool that you're doing what you're doing. And, we are discussing something that's very timely. And if people do think that, media is what we need to create and do it better, then we all need to pay attention to the space that we're holding. And we all need to have more cultural conversation around topics like this. And I think that when you start having this conversation and it does get tens of thousands of listens to it, that changes the outcome for how the perception is perceived. And I think that that is what we can leverage. And we can take what you guys are doing and build legitimacy into it by building a conversation around what is real. And what is real is chiropractors are out there winning. And chiropractors are out there fighting hard for the truth in the healthcare space. And it's not something that's just brand new. It's been something that's been over 120 years in the making, that what you guys are basically saying, that back from the day when people said that there should be Xrays, radiographs of the spine, now we are so far advanced that we're showing subluxations exist on these Xrays, and we're showing that the outcome improves when we do this type of conservative care, and it can save the results of risk dramatically. But we have to follow this plan, and we know that it works because we built research around it.
Well, and that's certainly a hot topic, obviously, and I agree with you 100%, is, we talked about X-rays, is, that's a hot topic in chiropractic, obviously, right now. Some chiropractors think, from what I've seen personally, some chiropractors think you shouldn't X-ray, or it's very rare that you should. There's other people that think you should X-ray everybody, and then there's people in between. My thing as a chiropractor, I do like X-rays most of the time because I want to see, is there an objectifiable subluxation that may lead to worse outcomes? And then I can educate my patient on why that is a problem. And not just my opinion, but here's some papers out of, Journal of Neurosurgery, all the stuff that I have on my site, like, here it is. But the thing that I get into trouble with, where some chiropractors, get a little unhappy, is I say, okay, well, you X-ray them, and you, on the report of findings, you said that this finding was really bad. And then one of two things happens, or maybe more than two things. You say it's really bad, and that's why they need care, and I agree with that. But then you don't re-X-ray them to see if you reduced it. And if you didn't reduce it, or you didn't try to reduce it, the question is why? If it's so important to know that it's there for the review of findings, so that they can, come in for treatment, and they're going to pay for your care, well, then don't you want to know if it's gone, right? And I say this to patients. Imagine if we're cardiologists, and a patient has asymptomatic high blood pressure. What is the treatment plan? The cardiologist understands that you're asymptomatic now, but we did find something, that your blood pressure is high, and that leads to worse outcomes. So that cardiologist's goal is to lower that blood pressure. That's not one visit. They're going to monitor you, right? They're going to give you a drug that you're going to take every day for the rest of your life. But treating someone chiropractically to reduce a problem that leads to worse outcomes, by some, is considered overtreatment, which doesn't make sense. Or imagine if the cardiologist said, hey, you have high blood pressure. That's your problem, or it's going to be a problem. But then I'm not going to recheck your blood pressure to see if what I'm doing is reducing that. So if it's so important to find on the X-ray for the review of findings, which I think it is, and a chiropractor says, you have a loss of curve, and that is bad, but then they don't do or apply a treatment to reduce that subluxation pattern, my not to argue, but to say is, okay, well, why? Like, what can we do to reduce that subluxation pattern so that we can reduce these long-term outcomes? And some of these long-term outcomes of abnormal spinal shape are, increased disability, increased tension on the central nervous system, vascular changes. Why don't we want to own that and change it? And I think it really comes down to, it's probably not time or place, but it comes down, I think, to a lot of reasons. And I'm not making a blanket statement. I just have my own personal, experiences that I can talk about.
So let's talk about marketing a little bit. What are some of your favorite key marketing strategies, and how do you use media to your advantage?
So you guys are probably going to hate me because I don't market. I don't have a marketing budget. I don't advertise. And maybe this is because when I first started my practice, I just asked the chiropractor if I can rent a room in his office. I knew nobody. I was like, look, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to pay your rent. And that was the truth. I rented a basement in a house, and I had a mattress on the floor, and that was it. And my wife, who was in chiropractic school, we started dating, and she came out, And I used to joke because I had this mattress on the floor. We used to joke like 3 thread count sheets, and I was like, "Yeah, you want me for my money?" And I didn't have money to market, and it was before the internet, which makes me sound even older. But I do love, there are I do market I have a Facebook page, right? I put stuff out on there on my Facebook. I don't even have an Instagram. I started an Instagram page, and I should probably get back on that because it is like free advertising. But the advertisements, the things that I like, and I know this isn't just a plug, but I do like, I tune into the Chiro hustles and I learn. I try to figure some of that stuff out of that marketing strategy. But for us, what has always worked, we've always been just in a referral only practice. We've never been in an insurance network where someone comes in and says, "Oh, you're in my network." So we've always had to give that really good quality of care. And, again, it's a selfless plug, but, we built my practice on our website that professionally integrated, where it's just information that we continue to learn, and we just show it to patients, and it's digital. It's online, and we show patients when they come in, "Hey, Mary, we talked about this pathology. Let me show you some stuff." And it's on my site, and I show them and print it out for them. And, and our marketing has always been really trying to learn who's in our community that we work well with, whether it's a dentist, right? We treat some dentists, and they understand what we do, I understand what they do, and that's the best form of marketing, is when a dentist has a patient and they're like, "I have neck pain." Well, they're going to refer to us, and if we have a patient that's like, "I have really bad toothache," we can send in, and you get those true personal relationships where you cross market. And maybe I should do more, and that's why I listen to Jim. Is like, all right, what other what true electronic marketing strategies can I get or can I do to implement? Because it would never hurt. I just, I've been fortunate enough, knock on wood, not saying my practice is always at 100%, but it's always been a referral only, based on us really trying to give that good quality care, hoping that the patients see the value and tell others, and then trying to keep it going on that front.
You said some really important things there, and one of the things that most people forget about when they think about this marketing world is relationship marketing. And I think so many times we think about transactional marketing, and that's what you get out of it, is you get a transaction, but you really don't build that fundamental relationship. And that's
Right.
why it's cool, like, when you do get into like some type of a professional network with, other service providers, you become the referable source because you built a relationship with these people. You take care of them, they trust you, and then that grows a bond of referral. And I think that
Right.
that's something that's really important to the chiropractic space, is not always looking for the new, but I've been talking to a lot of people recently, and PVA is something very important. And if you have a high level of retention and referral, you don't always have to go looking for the next person to help. Even though I think it's important to go out there and harvest your community and bust your butt and grow, a lot of times people they get locked into that referral network as much as local reach, and you get that local reach going for yourself, and the next thing you know, people that you didn't even think would be your number one referral source become your number one referral source, and you don't even know who that person's going to be. That's why it's
Right.
do right by everybody, and
That's right.
and help people.
I mean, because you never know, like you could get that one patient who refers 10 people in. And I think also, another thing that has worked for us is, I always tell younger chiropractors this is, just find your it. If you could be lucky enough to find your it, whatever that it is. For me, it has been jiu-jitsu, and that's a community. The people that I train with and the academy I go to, that I've been going to for 11 years, they're family to me. And I've met so many wonderful people that I support too, right? Because, I have a buddy who owns a car dealership here, and we met from jiu-jitsu. Well, guess what? When I'm going to buy a car, guess who I go to, right? Not because I saw something he did, it's because I know him from my community, my it. Whether it's hiking, you go in hiking groups, and I'm a jujitsu practitioner first when I'm in there. But if someone has a spinal question, they know that I'm a chiropractor, and because I'm there for my and then I try to give my chiropractic services back to that community, and I fraternize their businesses as well because they're one of me, and that personal touch, that personal connection is worth its weight in gold. It's just being you and supporting them, and they support you.
And really, that's
that common bond.
That's what we've done with chiropractic. Is we've come in and we've built those relationships with the profession. And I think that that's something very unique, is we have blurred the lines between the different camps. And we have brought the chiropractic conversation without borders, if you will. And we've been able to share powerhouses from the different corners of the chiropractic profession on one platform. And I think it's done something to drop the guard for who's communicating, and it gives people that local reach with us now to say we're more alike than we are different.
Well, and I think what you did, you nailed it on the head, is like, you don't have, you use the internet, right? Other people use the internet, but what you've done is exactly what I said. Like, I know Jim, other people know Jim, but then they know Jim is connected with the chiropractic profession, as opposed to somebody just trying to throw up some, let me market for chiropractors, but they don't have any connections because they're not being you, they're not being themselves, to make those connections first. And connections, I think, true connections are extremely important and hard to come by.
Yeah, so let's turn the page back to you a little bit again, and let's get to know you from like a fundamental level. Like, what do you like to read? What are your interests? Like, if we jumped onto your digital music player, like, what are you listening to?
So what I'm listening to, my wife makes fun of me because she's like, is there anything newer than like 90s, either like Led Zeppelin and Hendrix, and I even like old school rap. I have been, because I have a 15-year-old, almost 16-year-old. She does listen to some newer music, and I'll listen to some of that. So I do love, I do like Zeppelin, like I mentioned. I guess you could say old school rock now. I do like some rap and hip hop. I do like R&B. That would be on my playlist. Stuff like that.
So what are you reading?
So right now I'm reading The Dinosaur Artist, which is about like fossils and fossil laws and this whole story, because I like fossils. And I'm also reading another book that someone turned me on to called Structures, which is really fascinating. So those are the two books, and I hate to say it, but I'm losing a little bit of interest in the fossil one because it's going a little different direction. And I started kind of leaning back towards this one book called Structure that is really cool, and but I hate leaving a book unread. So right now the main one is The Dinosaur Artist that I'm reading.
Well, Evan, we are coming up towards the end of this episode. Do you have any websites or web link resources you could give people if they wanted to find out more about you?
Sure. My one main site that I put together for docs, where I just, give everything on a silver platter, is professionallyintegrated.com. And there's a bunch of free content on there. I do webinars with docs and researchers, and I just did a webinar on performing an initial exam so you can really identify problems and how to document correctly. And on there's all research that I constantly update with videos, and easy to copy and paste to put in your notes to increase your documentation and to validate, and obviously, most importantly, to educate patients on their spinal problems and how we can help, and what those spinal problems mean in the short and long term. And that's, as I mentioned, that's professionallyintegrated.com. And all my contact info and everything is on there. And of course, I'm with Katz Chiropractic in Boulder, Colorado, which you could always Google, or, my cell phone number's on there and call me. Those are my sites.
So is there anything you wanted to discuss with us that we just didn't ask you about?
Well, don't think we have enough time for that, is there? I think, I'm sure we could go back and forth talking about all sorts of good stuff. I think we hit on the topics, the good topics to kind of get that information out there. I think we hit on a lot of good stuff.
All right. Well, then that wraps up this edition of Chiro Hustle, and I want to thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. It's been, I wanted to get on this for a while, and I feel honored to be asked by you guys, by you, Jim, and I totally appreciate it. Thanks so much.
We've been really integrated in the chiropractic biophysics camp for some time now. I've been working in that area for about 10 years, so it's an honor to finally have you on the show, and it's really cool to break bread with you digitally.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see you soon. And once this article, I'll make sure I send it to you so you can take a look. Cause just wait.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for being our guest today, and send it over when it's ready.
Thanks so much. Will do. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks, Evan.
Thanks, man.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.